Now, please welcome Assistant Vice President of Business Application Engineering at EMC Insurance, Casey Harvey.
Good morning, and thank you for joining the Technology Innovation Track sponsored by EMC Insurance. EMC Insurance Companies is in the top 60 property casualty organizations in the United States and is one of the largest in Iowa based on net written premium. Founded in 1911, EMC Insurance Companies is financially solid, built on more than 100 years of serving policyholders and independent insurance agents. Today, EMC employs more than 2,400 employees in 19 locations across the country. As you're listening to this morning's session, feel free to post any questions you have into the Q&A section there on the right. I'll be joining the speaker following the presentation for Q&A. Now, allow me to introduce our speaker for this morning's session, Beth Trejo, founder and CEO of ChatterKick. Beth Trejo is the leader, mentor, innovator, torchbearer, founder, and CEO of ChatterKick. As a trailblazing entrepreneur, Beth loves to take risks, create, and collaborate. She's passionate about sharing her expertise with worldwide audiences as a national speaker and Forbes Business Council member. Please join me in welcoming Beth.
Good morning. I am so excited to be with you today. I want to start out by sharing a story. I'm going to take you back to 1999. I am a sophomore in high school and I am upset. I was out with my friends and I borrowed one of my friends' Kia Ceira phone in the Perkins parking lot and I called my mom. And I begged her, could I just stay up a little bit longer past my curfew so I could have a late night breakfast with friends? She denied me. And so I decided I had to go home. I'm driving home. I live in rural Iowa at the time, and I am all the teenage angst that you would expect, right? It's not fair. Why do I have to go home? Everybody else gets to have fun with their friends and, stay out late past curfew. But I followed the rules, so I came home. And in my house, we had one of those old Gateway computers. And I live in Sioux City, so that's close to my heart. And we had one of those massive monitors, magical sound when you're 16 years old. I had mail. And it was at that point that I realized that I could be connected with other people after curfew. I could have an entire world of chat rooms, of meeting new friends, of discovering things, still entrepreneur, honestly. I didn't really think that was going to be my path, but I was working at a chamber of commerce, our regional chamber of commerce here in Sioux City, and I was watching business deals get formed with handshakes, over coffee, over lunch, and I found this thread of connection and relationships led to business deals, led to opportunities. And at that same time, social media was emerging on the scene, and I watched the parallels of the online world and the offline world and how quickly they were intersecting. So I decided to start a bit, the idea that I was going to do the same thing as the Chamber of Commerce, right? I was going to help businesses form connections with people that matter, whether that was prospective employees or their customers and prospects. I grew ChatterKick for the first 3 years. We grew to 6 employees. And at that time, we had a lot of people interested in acquiring us. And I was having conversations with a few of those interested parties, and I found one that I thought would be a great fit. Because see, at the time, I wanted ChatterKick, and even still, to be more than just Beth, to be bigger than just a regional company. I wanted us to go far and do great things. And I also knew what slowed me down, which was administration, operations, all the back end things. And so I wanted a partner to be able to take care of that. And so I found one. And it was an investment group out of Baton Rouge, Louisiana. I had a mutual connection there, so that's kind of how the relationship started. And we decided to partner up. I would still operate ChatterKick as usual, and they would handle all the back end operations and the stuff that really, like I said, slowed me down, finance, etc. And so we grew from 6 employees to 22. It was crazy, it was nuts, it was exciting. And I want to tell you about a big mistake that I made at the time, because I think it's always important for us to learn from others. I really believed, and I think in some ways did protect our culture within ChatterKick, Sioux City, Iowa, right? But there was also another culture that was connected to us now. And the company that invested in us, they were from an entirely different sector of businesses, rice mills, agriculture, nowhere close to the technology space. And so some of the assets that we use that I thought would be so exciting and so helpful, like employee handbooks and some of the documentation practices, they were completely misaligned with the culture that we had at Chatterkick. I mean, everything from the length of skirts that we needed to wear to pantyhose required. And there was a big gap in what I actually needed and what I ended up getting. And even today, that kind of small little lingo and the words that were used in some of those documents, we're still kind of cleaning that up. So again, sold the company, we partnered, I was trying really hard to grow and scale. And the thing that I missed was the copywriting. And it seems so simple, but I want you guys to think about this in your organization. Does what you position yourself to employees, to new hires, to the people that come in contact with you internally and externally, does it all feel cohesive? Does it feel consistent? Does it feel like the same company inside and out? Now, we were with that company, the investment group, for about 3 years, and they had some change of management and leadership and decided that they really didn't want Chatterkick as a technology company in their portfolio, and really wasn't a good fit on the market. But I decided I would be willing to buy it back, and I was excited to. It was a choice and it was an investment. And when I bought the company back, it really gave me an opportunity to say, let's rearrange, fix it up like we want it to be positioned to grow and to thrive. And again, some of the things that we did, and kudos to my leadership team for helping so much, were the big things, but they were also the little things. Making onboarding and training practices fit our company and who we are, and add some fun and excitement into bringing people into the team. Again, how we position externally, what the words that we use, how we demonstrate our value to the world. And it really is an opportunity for many of you to take a look and really try to understand, how are you positioned to the world? One of the things that I think is really interesting in all the businesses and brands that we work with is the ones that are extremely successful, they start building who they are and how they serve their customers inside out. Instead of trying to say, oh, we're going to get yourself a fancy new website and all these supporting documentation, but the inside of the organization doesn't appear that way. But if you start in the beginning of this is who we are, how we operate, and the team we have, and you push that out to the world and you give your team members microphones so that you have the opportunity to spread the message, it works. And if you're authentic and you do what's right, your business will be able to thrive. And I'm confident in that. We see this a lot when it comes to social media, right? That's the space that I personally play in. And there's so many people and so many businesses that when you go to their accounts online, you go to their Facebook page, you go to their Instagram account, they may be a technology practice or a company in practice, but their assets, the places that they are putting their brand out into the world, are not that. They don't look innovative. They don't look fun and spunky. Are they sarcastic? Well, it doesn't feel like that. And that is one thing as you look to what you want to build and what you want to be, to getting all of that aligned makes a big difference. And again, we see this in 2020. People made mistakes, businesses made mistakes. We're humans. It was hard navigating all of these factors that were thrown in to us. And I made mistakes, other people made mistakes, but it's not about the actual mistake in most cases. It's what you do next that matters. And how are you, as a leader, as a technologist, going to show up and make sure that those mistakes that maybe you made in the past not only don't happen again, but that you have dialogue and communicate about them? Spreading your message, the good messages, the good work you do, is critical to be able to grow and scale. A couple of quick, easy tips for you if you're looking to the how to do this, right? How do I get my employees to share the message about our business? How do I get them excited and activated so that when I post something on LinkedIn, it spreads out into our customers and prospects? Well, there's a couple of easy tools that you can use. The first is LinkedIn specifically has a button that when you post an update, it says notify employees. It's native on the platform, so that's an easy way that you can let your employees know that a post against your business went out. There's also some really old school but simple ways that you can share to keep your team members and the people that are in your network just notified, right? Because a lot of these platforms, we don't always know when those posts come out. I've seen in businesses just email a weekly update to say, these are the posts that went out, please feel free to share. Because there's a lot of people in your organization that probably would share if they just had a reminder. The same thing of just continuously connecting with your employees on a personal level. Be connected with them on LinkedIn, share their posts sometimes. Put it in your Slack message. Let people know, hey, we just posted a job. Please share it with your friends on social. It's a great way to be able to take that opportunity that you have, whether it's a sales opportunity or a recruitment opportunity, and get it out to much more people. Because the biggest thing that I recommend to start is, are you proud of how you're communicating, who you are as a business to the rest of the world? The first step to do this is to search yourself. And I want you to think of yourselves in two lenses, right? Because we have an employee lens and how your team members approach your brand and your business. And then we have a customer and a prospect lens, how they see your brand or business. And I want you to take yourself on that journey for both of those people and search. Find the research that those people would be looking for. They want to know, what does it look like to work in your business? What does it feel like? It's kind of that concept of what's in the break room fridge, right? I want to know from the desk chairs I'm going to be using, to the equipment that I'm going to be getting, to the people I'm going to be working with, because they will search it out and they will find it. But many times, if you don't have control over those assets, or if it's been just an afterthought, right? There's so many businesses like social media doesn't matter to us, it doesn't drive customers. But one thing I want you to think about is it does give an opportunity to showcase who you are and what you do. And if it's outdated, people are going to feel like it's outdated when they come across your profile. So the first thing is be found for your name, right? You want to be able to be found for employees as well as prospects, just simply for your name. And in some cases, business names are not always straightforward. So start with that. Then search that business name plus reviews. Those are typically the two main search patterns that people are going to be looking for, because employees are going to be looking for reviews on Glassdoor, on Comparably, on Indeed. They're going to be combing those reviews. And yes, you're probably going to have bad ones. That's okay. People don't expect you to be perfect. But what they do want to see is, what do you do next? If there was a mistake, if there was a complaint, are you responding? Most of those platforms actually allow you to respond to those reviews and jump in the conversation. Bring it offline, get it out of the actual application itself, and have a dialogue with that employee. And sometimes they actually remove the post. The same thing on the prospect side. Search yourself, search reviews. How do you appear? I think a lot of people, when they look at their website, especially if it's, again, the afterthought type of opportunity, they're like, oh yeah, it's fine. It seems great. It looks good. Maybe it's updated. It's mobilely responsive. But the challenge is, and this is where I would like you to challenge yourself, read it to someone who doesn't know what you do. Read it to a child, because a lot of us use words that are so vanilla in our marketing that anybody could say that's who they are, right? We provide technology solutions. We provide, the best possible customer's experience. To who? Narrow that down. You want to slap people in the face with, this is what we do, how we serve, and what impact we have. And putting that front and center on your website and your social media accounts is really important. I would also encourage you, don't forget about your orientation, your handbooks, your training programs. Lots of training videos that are probably outdated. And if it feels like you have to push the VHS tape in, probably time to update that whole experience. And then don't forget to ask. Ask your customers, ask your employees for feedback. How was it going through our process? What did you feel as you came into the organization? Because it's not just about what we hear, right? It's the feelings that matter as well. So you want to dig deep into those opportunities to make things better, to make things smoother, easier, higher retention. It matters. Gamification. This is one of the best ways to make some of the material that we have in our organizations just a little more fun. And it really is interesting because a lot of times performance reviews, take an example. We did this for our performance reviews of being able to take what is a very dry and oftentimes painful process for both the managers and the employees and just give it a little bit of personality. You don't have to make everything fun, but think about it in terms of how do we give it personality? Because that will make the experience that someone has with you, again, whether that's your prospects and customers or your employees, feel differently. And when people feel, it retains memories. And that's what you want. You want people to remember who you are and, again, how you impact the world. So the performance review quizzes that we made, very simple. They were on Typeform, and it was almost like a game. And it went through the questions. Again, they were serious. This is people's careers that we're talking about here and career pathing. This was not a something to be taken lightly, but just by changing the way that it felt like to go through that analysis of performance, where you're at and where you want to go, giving that information to the coaches and the people that are going to be helping them out, it changes the way and the approach that many of the employees have with how that works. Another really fun tool that I would encourage you to lean on to foster connections specifically within your team is called GatherTown. And it's almost like a Sims version of co-working. It's a virtual co-working space. You can build rooms, you can collaborate, and you go into different areas. And when you come closer to people, the voices and the audio gets louder. And if you need to kind of give yourself a little space, it gets quieter and you can go into a different room. It was a great way that we were able to foster that collaboration, and you could use it with so many different opportunities. Maybe you had a customer day and you would have different breakout rooms that your customers could go to learn about different topics. Any way that you can take that online experience that most of us know is not going to go away and really create connections is what's going to matter. The other fun things that you can do, because a lot of businesses are stuck in this world of how do we create all of this content that needs to come across all of our social media channels, all of our website materials, all through podcasts, whatever the case may be. There's a massive volume of content that most businesses need to have. And the other challenge is maybe you're in a B2B setting or in a space where you don't see or talk to your customers much. You're just sitting behind a computer. Well, one way that we've been able to kind of make it fun internally, and you could take the same model, is have a scavenger hunt. And really what this is, it's a fun way to help your team capture content on your behalf. And the content itself is not as much of what matters, but it's the context in the content. Because your salespeople, your team members, your frontline workers, your customer success individuals, they know your customers well, and they have this intimate knowledge of what problems they're having and how your product or solution is helping them. And so if you ask the right questions and you try to get people to go find a picture of, the last time you helped XYZ customer, maybe it's just a picture of you next to your computer. Maybe it's a piece of copy. What was the biggest challenge that this customer had that we were able to solve? And you put those together so that now you're creating fun and team building because maybe you have teams that are doing this, but the scavenger hunt itself is just really a list of things that you're asking them to get. You do it in a short amount of time frame, like maybe an hour, maybe you get off early on a Friday afternoon and you use that to facilitate some team bonding. But all of that is really where you get an amazing amount of authentic and real content. The content that is going to drive customers, the content that's going to make your employees proud, right? Because they're capturing it. And some people this will be much easier for than others, and that's okay. That's why you add a little competition into the mix, and oftentimes it becomes a lot of fun. And the other thing I want, and what I really realized, was stop talking at people and start talking with people. And what I realized from 2020, and this is what, big confession, is the things that I thought were true and said were true, in some regards, yes, that was accurate, but other things really rocked all of our worlds. One example of that is we always had a flexible work environment, and we reintroduced a flexibility policy right early 2020. So we were good to go as the transition happened from working in the office to remote. But one of our big rules that we had with that was you can't have your kids home, right? Because we have a lot of families and a lot of young parents, and you just need to have childcare for your children if you're going to be working at Chatterkick. That was kind of our rule, right? Well, hello 2020, right? When all of our kids were home, mine included, we were trying to do everything. I mentioned we have many young parents. And I think it made me realize that what I thought was the rules for myself and for the company, we had to adjust, we had to pivot, and we really had to realize what was important was helping our employees navigate it, because it was hard for them too. It was hard for the business and it was hard for them. And the things that mattered the most when it's all crazy and difficult and the communication's coming in all directions was to go backwards in time. It was the digital technology, yes, that was awesome. But how could we, as team members of 20 people, really be there for each other, help each other out? If someone's kid was crying in the background, cover for them, or help them out, or let them just unwind and unplug and take over their work for them. And I think it really offers a chance of collaboration. It offers the opportunity for support. And it was one of those things that thought I knew, but now I really know that what really matters will surface, right? And I think I encourage this I have an 8 and 10-year-old child, and I really encourage my kids to learn small talk. And it's funny how much of that is gone in the digital space. How many times do you just call somebody without giving them a heads up or chatting them that you're going to give them a call? Yes, I understand that's polite. But sometimes you just need to pick up the phone and have that dialogue. Hey, how's it going? I'm not calling you for any specific reason. I just want to know, how are you? How are you feeling? And I think sometimes in the craziness of things, and I even feel like this now with 2020 and things kind of moving back to a normal, that the slowness and the beauty of just checking in on people, it seems to just kind of like, okay, people are fine again. But I don't always think that that's the case. So I highly recommend pick up the phone, check in on people, have a conversation that's not, I need, I want, please get this to me. Because I don't know about you guys, but I do this all the time on chat, and I'm completely guilty of going into a meeting and you're back to back, and it's just like, okay, let's go. We got to do this. This is the deadlines. Where are we going to go? You're kind of getting your list of demands and needs or what you have to solve. But we miss that, hey, good morning. How's it going? Did you have a good weekend? Those little things are the biggest things for some people. And you never know what someone's actually going through in their lives. Because sometimes that chat or that message can feel completely different than what it actually was meant to do that. An example I have, my best friend, Mary, works at the company, and I was just chatting her on our messaging chat, and she works part-time, so I just messaged her, hey, are you working today? meaning like in my head, like, I don't want to bother you if you're not working, whatever, we'll catch up later. And she immediately responded something like, well, I'm not going to be in, and I told my team about it, and kind of all of these things. Like, you could tell she thought, she was like, wait, am I supposed to be working today? And I think it was just, and I laughed and we had a conversation about it, but it really made me realize, man, one little chat can set people on a path in their brains or in their hearts that was completely not intended to be that. But I think we need to be very cautious of how those messages come through and how one message or 3 questions in a row can feel attacking. I think that's a really good example of Slack messages or chat messages or even text messages. When you ask multiple questions in a row, it really does feel like, oh my gosh, they want everything from me. It feels like a demand instead of I'm just trying to get information. Another idea that I have that has worked really well for many companies is don't forget to mix your messaging distribution. What I'm saying is some people write awesome emails and they update their team each month or each week. Some people have daily stand-ups, but there are other times, especially for those individuals on your team that need to process information either ahead of time or after the meeting or a social interaction, mix it up. One example of that is to send video messages as the leader or as a team member so that people can reference what you said. Because again, if you're in a meeting, you're going fast, you're like me, you speak fast, there's a lot of information in one spot. And then after that, you're like, man, I hope I took notes, right? So an idea is to include a simple video. One of my favorite tools is called Vidyard, and it's a browser-based video, so I don't have to worry about uploading or messing with all of the video distribution stuff. It's just a video I can quickly on my browser record, send out via a link, and it really doesn't take long at all and helps to have another form of communicating to your team. You could also integrate that in training videos, right? Because you're probably answering a question multiple times. How can you use that again to help with training, to help educate on a consistent basis, and really, instead of doing all of this rework? Another thing I would recommend is really developing a consistent listening strategy. And this listening strategy is not listening to the gossip that bubbles up. Because I think as leaders, that is one of the hardest things to try to sift and filter. What is real? What are people really feeling? And what are they telling their friends they're feeling? And how do I read between the lines so that I know when burnout is a thing and when it's just some people having a conversation, maybe just venting to each other? And so a listening strategy is really critical and key to being able to understand what is really important and also how you can help. So how do you do that? Well, the simplest version of that is just creating a form. Again, I like Typeform. They have a really great templates that are already set on there. But there's other forms that you can do that just check in on people. And some organizations, especially if you're small, anonymous surveys or forms are going to be extremely difficult. And I think sometimes it's even worse. But what you can promise is confidentiality. And I think that's really what you're trying to identify when you're doing these surveys is you want people to feel like they can trust you and that they're in a safe space and they can say what's really important to them in a confidential basis so that they're telling you the truth and they're not just, saying something that you want to hear. The other thing I will mention when it comes to really having conversations with your team, don't forget, especially if you're in a virtual environment or in a digital world, we're all a digital world, but if you're working in a co-working space or a virtual environment, schedule buddy times or hallway hangings, I've heard them called, or intentional kind of just conversations that you just don't talk about work. And I know for some people, especially those introverts, this can be a really hard thing. Necessarily want to be the person that is just like, okay, now what do I talk about? It's awkward in person. It's even more awkward in, a Zoom room. But the reality is we all know this is important, right? You can look at every study that's out there. It is critically important that teams are connected, whether they're your contracting teams or your internal teams, and getting to know people across departments, across business units, however your organization is set up, is so critical. Because a lot of people think that the marketing just lives in marketing and communication lives in marketing. But the reality is we're all communication companies. We're all writing emails or sending text messages or trying to get our teams and employees on the same page. And again, the words that you say matter. So creating those 30-minute random pairing up of teams or just interactions really does matter. And one of the really easy ways that I've found to make this happen is just make assignments. So Beth goes with Mary and you kind of, who's the scheduler. That way, everybody knows you should be expecting a meeting invite from this person and you're the scheduler this week and they're the scheduler next week, right? So I think that it's a really great, simple way. All of these things are free, they do not cost money. And when you think about how you can help amplify your voice, improve communication across the organization, it really is the little things that make the biggest impact. So we're going to open it up for questions now, but I do just want to reiterate that the way that we communicate really does matter. And I've had this question a lot about TikTok and about new emerging platforms, and should I even be paying attention to this? I'm in B2B, I'm in technology, I sell to cattle farmers, all of the things. A lot of us are like, nah, we don't need to worry about that. But what I really encourage you to do is to be listeners, because in order to communicate well, you really need to know what the other person is doing, behaving, thinking, building those intimate relationships, and the people that are your employees or your prospects really does matter. And so what I would encourage you with those emerging platforms specifically, and the ones that are out there, Facebook, Instagram, is search your category. If you sell to nurses or if you sell to teachers, go on those platforms, go on TikTok and search the hashtag, search it out. What are the teachers of TikTok really talking about? What challenges are they having? What struggles are they dealing with? And understand that listening, you don't have to have a profile on those platforms immediately, but it is important to understand how those individuals are interacting, consuming content, and ultimately, how are they communicating? Because if you want to communicate in 2021 and beyond, it's going to be really hard to just continue to do what you have been doing. You need to evolve, and those platforms are this biggest ocean of just opportunity to understand what other people are doing and how they're connecting with things that really matter to them. Because if you can get that bond, the bond between your employees, the bond between your customers, you will be able to have a stronger brand. So I'm going to open it up now. Casey, if you want to put any questions that are out there, I'd be happy to answer.
Yeah, thanks, Beth. And I would say I drew a lot of comparisons with what the EMC is going through recently with this change and being innovative during 2020 to figure out how to communicate and connect to our employees as well as our customers. So I appreciate your comment. We do have a couple questions coming in here. So first one, is there any recommendations for knowing how to balance time for teams to connect? For example, hallway hangs versus allowing them to do their work, and how often is too often, versus forced and annoying and effective. So that's our first question.
So I definitely think there's a two-pronged approach for that. First, asking your employees that same thing, like, what do you feel like is a good cadence? Or doing it for a month as you kind of have in your brain, and then evaluating and asking, okay, is this working for us? Is it not enough? Is it too much? I think the challenge is always consistency, right? Because what gets canceled first when you have a new customer, what gets canceled first when you're busy, are all of those things. But ultimately, if you have a business where team connection matters the most, because it's going to help your efficiency, it's going to help your recruitment and what you're trying to do internally, So I would encourage you to, bi-weekly is a good amount, 30 minutes. I wouldn't go daily. And sometimes just depending on the pace of your business, weekly might be too much. But what we usually find is people don't like to do them initially. They, especially introverts or people that do not get energized by other people's back and forth. But after the fact, they're grateful. And again, it would be the first meeting that they would cancel. But if they don't, and they just keep it on the calendar, and as a leader, it really is important to say, these are a priority for our team. We just want you to form connections with others. And if you can do that on a bi-weekly basis as an expectation, these are the only reasons you can miss or cancel, and give people some clarity, because I think what happens is sometimes it gets weighted to people that are naturally just like that. They like to chit chat and connect. And then the people who are quieter, again, in person or digitally, don't get that experience. And so you have to have some sort of a consistency across your organization to make sure everybody gets into the mix. So I would say bi-weekly is a really great starting point, depending on how many employees that you have. The other thing that you can do as a leader is to give prompts on those. So a lot of times people won't even answer those questions, but give them 4 or 5 different questions to start out with, in case they're like, well, what do we talk about? Oh, great, we have a roadmap, right? We can start listing these things out so that we know where to start a conversation.
I think earlier you talked about, the communication externally. So how do I get our company to shift from marketing owns all the communication to that each person has a role in that communication?
Yes, I think this is one of the biggest opportunities that brands have. And it does start with leadership. You have to understand, but I would that same journey, like go become a customer for a day, become an employee for the day, because I'm assuming those are the 2 main priorities of most businesses right now, is retention and recruitment of employees. In your meeting, let's pretend we're a customer today. What would I start? What would I Google for? I think it really helps people understand, okay, communication is bigger than what one person or one department may own.
It's been a big challenge last year, is knowing where that line is, right, on social media and online. So, you talk about all those different technologies. Do you encourage the team to be fluent in the several platforms in order to meet the customers and be tech savvy? Or how do you navigate the waters? I mean, there seems to be platforms coming up all the time.
Yeah. So 100%. And I know it's overwhelming and they change all the time. First of all, I think the starting point is you have to get used to them. I think that's one of the things that fuels me about being in a social media company is these platforms change and we don't get noticed, right? Facebook will change something, Instagram will change something. We're running, lots of ad dollars for these platforms, big brands, but we don't get noticed. So we have to be agile and adaptive. And if you can start by building that sort of a culture, even if it's a task force in your organization or it's a smaller group, and get them as the change, quick adaptation task force, I think that's a really good place to start. I think that you don't have to be on all the platforms, but you need to understand what people are using them for and how they're working. And I see this a lot again in categories that people are like, well, cattle farmers aren't on TikTok, or 70-year-old finance people don't use it. But if you look and you search the topics, there are people and hundreds of thousands of videos getting viewed in those categories. And it's important, if that is your industry, that you know what's going on, because those are the first things that people miss. And if you don't miss them and you take note and say, this would be a good blog post we could use because this video is working. Or maybe, man, people are not caring about this, but they care about that. Let's lean into that, or let's do some more discovery. I think that's one of the biggest opportunities that people miss with social media is, again, they think it's marketing, but recruitment and data and understanding customer insights, building those connections is a huge opportunity with the platforms. So it's not always an either or. A lot of times right now, it's an and. You have to be on a handful of them if you want good search presence, if you want to, reach out to new audiences and understand how they're interacting with content. But I do think that I would put a caveat, make sure that your focus is impactful. So in other words, don't just do the things to do the things. I see a lot of people do that. It's okay to kind of lighten down one of the platforms. Maybe Twitter is really news driven and it's not getting you much in terms of traffic or what you're trying to do. So maybe you just do a very light strategy on Twitter. You keep the accounts alive, you do a little listening, and you play with relevant hashtags in that space. And you kind of like, that's our strategy here, and that's okay to have a lighter strategy. But what you don't want to do, and I see this happen all the time, is only post holiday. Merry Christmas, Happy Easter, and another stock photo comes for Memorial Day, and then you're sell, and you wonder why your social media isn't working. Like if that's you, it's because you're not communicating appropriately on those platforms, and ultimately, the easiest strategy is to tell your story. Who are you, behind the scenes, a day in the life, what you stand for, your mission, vision, values, all should be somewhat indicated on your platforms. And that's when they start working really well. Regardless of demand gen and lead gen, just building a foundation of what do we look like online? One of my favorite questions that I encourage CEOs and leaders to answer is, are you proud of what you look like online? Because ultimately what's working, what's not working, all of that stuff is way more complicated to answer. But if you as a leader are not proud, or your employees are not proud at what you look like online, you're in trouble, because then they aren't going to share anything. Then they aren't going to, wear your t-shirt with pride. So I think it's a really good starting point of just saying, are you proud of your Facebook presence? Are you proud of your website? Are you proud of what you come across after you search yourself?
Yeah, you kind of say just doing it or just calling it in, kind of go back to your vanilla, don't be vanilla about what you do and how you want to do it. So I appreciate that. And, you kind of talked about it that, weekly, maybe sending out email to your employees, but how do you really get your employees to share your message, to really get it out there?
You have to make a message that people care about, number one. And again, this is why I really think starting from the inside out makes a difference. The other thing is you probably have employees that care, they just don't know that you posted something. So one thing that we've done is, and I've seen other organizations do this too, of like during your team meeting, you'll say, okay, anybody that wants to, because forced sharing is not what you want either. Don't have that. But hey, we just posted this piece of content. We're really proud of it. We think it's going to help us get to this goal. Please share it on your account right now. Everybody go click the share button. Because a lot of times, some of your employees may not even be connected to your social assets. So another tip for that is onboarding and offboarding your employees. Don't just say, go check out our social media accounts. No one wants to do that. But if you give them a reason to, like this is where we put fun employee spotlight posts. So if you want to go see your fellow teammates and understand some fun seasons and series that we've done, go over to Facebook and share the post. It will help spread our message. Yeah. You have to kind of put some context in that.
Yeah, so then you get your employees connected to it, but what happens then? I think you touched on this earlier, when they post something bad about you online or about the company online, because now you're connected, and it's been a challenge as of late too, as we get more social media, there's more and more opinions out there.
Yes, and we saw this so much last year, and I don't think this is going to stop at all. So the first thing is you need to have some sort of a plan before it happens. It's going to happen to all of us, right? So in the moment planning, disagree in a political stance, and we have a client that's on this side of the spectrum, right? What are we going to do about that? Is that okay? Is that not okay? How are we going to approach it? Is that a cause for termination? Because a lot of employees may not know where that line stands. And a lot of people don't even know how the privacy works on these platforms. So even if they thought that it was a private comment, maybe it wasn't. So you kind of need to walk through that with people and let the employees know your approach. The other thing that I would really sure that you do is talk through this more than just one time. How many people throw this in their handbook and say, this is our social media policy and we're done? Like, that's it. And then I panic because someone said something bad about our organization. You have to incorporate this dialogue into so many things and make sure that this does not just live with HR, this does not live with marketing. You have this conversation as a team on an ongoing basis. And those are the companies that are pretty clear cut. If you do this, not good. If you do this, your business, not ours. And, in this space, this is all part of what your job is to represent us as an employer and as a brand.
I guess one of the Q&As I have is, do you still have that gateway computer by chance?
No, I don't. Probably should have kept it just for old time's sake, but I do not.
At least the box, right?
Yeah, right.
The box. I guess the one question I will have also kind of came up for me is, you talked about just checking in. Having opens a conversation without the intent of a conversation, just saying, hey, how are you doing? Just pick up the phone and call. Did you see that there was much of the challenge of saying you calling an employee and just saying, hey, I'm just checking in? Was there you think at first there was a little bit of hesitation to answer the call?
Yes, there's definitely fear. And I always preface with, I want you to know I have no agenda. You're not in trouble. I try to all those hesitations that probably would run through my head. I tell them, I just want to see how you're doing. And then you can hear it in the phone of being like, okay, well, I'm, my 2-year-old is sick and I am just exhausted. And then again, I could connect as a mom, or I have a conversation that just really isn't, I'm in a position of power and you're not, which I think is really hard if you're a leader trying to talk to somebody that may not, maybe 3 people down in the reporting chain. But I do think it's also where I've learned some of the most important thing about my employees that helps me help them navigate scenarios, or helps how I position the business to be able to be supportive of, parents with young children or whatever the scenario may be. So I would call them, leave a voice message. I know a lot of people don't leave voice messages anymore, just to say, hey, this is Beth checking in, want to see how things are going. I have no agenda here. Everything's good, but I just want you to know that you matter. And I'm open to have a conversation if you ever want to just connect, or, let's regroup next week.
Great. Beth, I think it's all the time we have for questions today. I want to thank you for sharing your experience as well as your expertise with us. Is there anything you want to close on that you would like to end with for the audience?
I don't think so. I really appreciate the opportunity, and I really do encourage everybody to understand how the connection of the future is really going to be our currency. And as businesses and brands, we really need to focus on not just communicating, but fully connecting with our audiences.
Great. Thank you, Beth. And I hope everyone has a great rest of the day. Thank you.
Take care.